Let's talk about Iran and this new framework agreement. The president says this is a historic agreement.
Well, it's not historic. This agreement has been called a framework agreement. This is the second framework agreement. There was a framework agreement back in the 1990s that the previous Democratic president, Bill Clinton, negotiated. This was with another country that had a history of not complying to international treaties, had a history of not negotiating in good faith. And that framework agreement was with North Korea. And shortly after that framework agreement was put in place, sanctions were relieved. North Korea abdicated the agreement and developed a nuclear weapon. It provided the relief that North Korea needed to be able to retool, to restock, to get their economy stronger so they could move forward on a nuclear program. We are going to this is Framework Agreement 2. And Framework Agreement 2 is going to end up the same way if it's approved. Framework Agreement 2 is going to do the same thing that Framework Agreement 1 did, which is lead another rogue nation that has never kept any of its treaties, that is not keeping the current treaties that it is under right now with respect to the nuclear inspections. It's going to give them the opportunity to have a financial resurgence because of the restrictions, the sanctions being lifted, to move forward and to do even more dangerous things. Because North Korea is an isolationist state that really is just concerned about its own survival. It's an atheistic country with an atheistic leader who has one goal in mind: survive. Iran is an expansionist Islamic theocracy whose objective is not to survive, but to spread radical Islam, Shia Islam, throughout the world. That's why you see the Sunni world reacting so negatively. That's why you see Israel reacting so negatively. This is an expansionist country that doesn't care about surviving. It cares about bringing about the end of time so they can conquer the world. This is a dangerous, dangerous country to be messing with nuclear weapons.
The president in the Rose Garden said to ask his critics about what the alternative would be. Either you get a reduction of the centrifuges, inspections, or the alternative could be another war in the Middle East.
I don't think it's that simple. We have an opportunity, before these negotiations started, we had an opportunity to really bring Iran to its knees. It was coming to its knees. Well, because of the sanctions that were in place. And if
These have been the toughest sanctions, and they've been in place for years.
Yes, but the reason Iran came to the table was because it was actually, over time, now really causing pain for them, causing disruption in their economy, causing a fueling, as you saw a few years ago with the Green Revolution. There's real unrest in Iran. The day that this framework was agreed to, there were celebrations in the streets of Iran. People were ecstatic because they're gonna have the opportunity to be able to trade with the rest of the world and have an improved economy. What we've done is strengthen the regime that has killed our troops in Afghanistan and in Iraq by the IEDs they produce, that is fomenting terror around the world, that is now trying to take over Yemen, already has influence in Beirut and in Damascus. This is an expanding Iranian world, and we are now providing legitimacy to this rogue regime. It's one of the reasons the Sunnis are upset, the Saudis, etc., all upset because we are now strengthening the hand of Iran through this negotiation.
I guess the question is, what would you do differently? Because even under these toughest sanctions ever, they're still advancing their nuclear program. So the only other alternative would be to militarily take out their nuclear program.
No, the only alternative would be to ramp up those sanctions, impose the ones that we had before, ramp them up as Congress has been wanting to do for quite some time. And recall, the administration has been very reticent about putting these sanctions in place, has in fact held off putting many of these sanctions in place. So ramping up those sanctions and drawing clear lines in the sand, saying you will reduce, you will shut down these centrifuges, you will take the plutonium reactor and shut it down, or sanctions will continue and maybe other things will be put on the table. And unless you start putting those things on the table, drawing lines in the sand and saying you either comply with these things or not, we're not going to get any kind of movement on the part of Iran.
Senator Santorum, thank you for joining us.
Thank you, Nora.